Hey, hello, howdy, how you doing? Build 42's Unstable branch has been out for about 24 hours now, and the takes are hot. This was always going to be a divisive build release, and it's understandable. For the role-playing tactical realism players, this is peak Zomboid. To the casual players who just want to bonk zombies and survive to become a bit too OP, it's tantrum-inducing. After streaming and making a video on the release, I took a few hours off to do things like sleep and hang out with my wife and daughter. So you can imagine my surprise, or rather lack thereof, when I woke up this morning to see full-on battles taking place in the comments. Listen, I get it. There's some disgust with a few features, some changes that didn't seem like they needed to be made but were made anyway, and some odd art style choices, so I wanted to make a quick video and address some of that based on what I've been able to find out from the devs, the community's thoughts on some of these issues, and some more of my unsolicited opinions. The goal isn't to be negative in this video though, so if you're just here to listen to me bitch and moan, this isn't the place. There will be some bitching, but I also feel like all my complaints were covered in the previous video that I dropped at like midnight last night, so just go watch that. Instead, I'm gonna try to offer you, the player, some fixes to some of the larger issues that you guys seem to be having with the game so far. For starters, the Moodles. I think most of us are in agreement on this. What the hell was wrong with the old Moodles, that they needed to be changed to whatever this is? It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, so I hit up one of my buddies who's a full-time streamer, and lo and behold, Lemmy, the co-founder of the Indie Stone, was actually in his stream and explained this to him. Now this isn't a one-to-one quote, but from what Beaver mentioned, the explanation is that the Moodles will be impacted by NPCs, or the NPCs are going to be able to have special effects on your Moodles, which is why they made the changes to them. Something along those lines. Admittedly, I didn't really push on this because 1, it's a secondary source, and 2, this was after spending about 15 hours doing nothing but staring at a monitor, and I just wanted to go to bed. I'm not sure if NPCs applies to the animals and whatnot, or if it's the added NPCs coming in 2045 with Build 43, but the alleged explanation given is that they will be impacted by NPCs in some capacity. Now, to me, I don't really see how that has anything to do with the damaged Moodle looking like an egg of all things, or the face Moodles looking like they should be in an M-rated Pokemon game, but don't worry, there is a fix for this. If you're one of those players who doesn't like the new Moodles, Mando already came in clutch and dropped a mod that adds the old Moodles into Build 42 Unstable. The link for it is down in the description, so if you prefer the old Moodles, go pick that up and tell him thank you, because the man dropped this less than 3 hours after Build 42 launched. Alright, next up, Muscle Strain. This was my biggest complaint with Build 42, and likely will remain that way. I did see a few hundred comments also complaining about it, so while I'm happy I'm not alone in my distaste, I do want to correct some misinformation regarding it. Now, real quick, I do recognize that some people may just be parroting what I'm saying in the comments because I'm the first person they heard talk about it and they just latched onto that opinion. So take this with a grain of salt. For starters, Muscle Strain can in fact be turned off in sandbox settings. It's under the character category, and about 10 spots down you'll see the Muscle Strain factor. If you hate it and think it's a horrible mechanic, just set it to 0. If you like it but think it's a little too strong at the moment, I recommend putting it at around 0.6. That seems to be the most balanced position for it for me. It's worth noting here that I fucked up explaining this on stream as well. Strength does have an impact on Muscle Strain, but it's minuscule. We're talking like a 0.5 difference between level 0 and level 10 strength, so it's not something that you can just out-strength your way out of, especially considering how difficult it is to level your strength skill at those higher levels. Regardless, this is a setting that can be tweaked in sandbox settings, so if it's something that bothers you, you can simply turn it off or reduce it. Guns! Now, personally, I really like the gun changes, but it seems like there's a bit of animosity towards it, and I want to try to get to the bottom of it, because to me, it kind of feels like one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't situations. Or rather, one of those, this is the internet and we're here to bitch talking points. When it came to guns in Build 41, the biggest complaints were that rifles suck at low levels, and there's no crosshair to aim with, so it's essentially a guessing game. In my opinion, guns received a pretty substantial buff to their damage, with the exception of shotguns no longer multi-hitting, though I'm sure that's a bug, but now people are complaining that there is a crosshair now, and that they can't shoot everything they see, but that's still the point. Just because there's a crosshair now, that doesn't mean there isn't a margin for error when shooting. Just because you set your sights on something at level 0 doesn't mean you're going to hit it. I think a lot of people just saw the crosshair over the zombie and were expecting it to never miss another bullet, and that's just simply not the case. I will say, if you're wanting to know a little bit more about this and test it yourself, try out aiming with a veteran build or after there's 2 or 3 levels in the skill and you'll notice a massive difference. For me, I was able to hose down zombies with a pistol at a relatively low level, which is something that we just weren't able to do in Build 41. It just seems like kind of a moot point when one of the most downloaded mods on Build 41's tab is an implemented crosshair that was cosmetic only, and people loved it, but when we finally get an actual crosshair in the game, all of a sudden people don't want it anymore? It just doesn't really make sense to me. I don't know, maybe I'm in the minority on this, but I'm just not understanding the hate towards it. Now, with all that being said, there are known hit registration issues with guns at close range, so if that's what you're experiencing that's causing you issues, step back a few feet for now and wait for a patch to come out. Alrighty, on to the big one. AI art. Did they implement it? Is it legit? Is it AI slop? Who knows? Good thing we have the gold-tiered Reddit investigators on the case. Listen, there is a serious conversation to be had regarding AI slop in video games. There's also a way to handle this accusation without immediately tossing blame. For starters, not everything is AI because it doesn't look like what you want it to. I think that while some of this is warranted, a lot of this is very overhyped. Are the Moodles AI? No, most likely not. Let's put that narrative to rest now. So what do people think is AI? Well, it's mainly these images. Now, since Reddit did what Reddit does best and collectively blew their lids on this, the images have been removed from the start screen and we're back to the default Build 41 artwork. So are they AI generated? Well, everyone certainly seems to think so. I'm not an artist or an art critic, but I think what throws a lot of people off is the style, which is that overly smooth, bright quality that you find in like Black Ops 6 now. But I don't think that alone should be enough to accuse someone of using AI art. I mean, anyone can draw a bunch of red arrows on a picture and say what they want about it. Collectively, I wish we'd all just stop and sit on the topic for longer than 15 seconds before just dragging someone's work through the mud, especially when we don't have full-on proof or confirmation that something is AI. For all we know, this could have been someone who spent weeks handcrafting this only to have their career torched because Reddit got mad. That being said, I think the response was about on par for the Indie Stone. And by that, I mean, in a not-so-shocking turn of events, Lemmy once again returned to the cesspool known as Reddit and shared his thoughts. I'll leave these up on screen for you all to read, but if you want the TLDR, here it goes. We, the Indie Stone, commissioned an artist for these pictures. Maybe AI was used, but maybe it wasn't, and if it was, it's not really our fault since we didn't use it to replace the artist. We just didn't really check with the artist after receiving the work. And even if it is AI, meh, it looks great. Now, obviously, that is a perfect response to a pissed-off community regarding AI content in their favorite game. 10 out of 10. All of these posts are now locked as well, so no further comments can be made on them. Shortly after this post, though, another post hit the forum with a screenshot of one of the devs saying it's not AI artwork, to which Lemmy responded to that saying, if you think a writer employee who was just dimly aware we commissioned art for an artist for those screens saying that that's not AI is the Indie Stone denying that there was any AI used, please look a little higher to the pinned comment I made. We're not denying anything. The company isn't a hive mind, but I don't know. I feel like someone saying this is not AI art is a pretty objective denial of the accusation, but that's just me. About 8 hours after that, he made a pretty long comment on a post showing that the artwork has been removed. Real quick, smart move. Not being sarcastic, that's a good decision. If your fan base is pissed about something, revert it ASAP and assess the situation. Alright, back in. So, the AI artwork was removed this morning, and this was Lemmy's response to that post. It's a similar vibe to the infamous meltdown from about 6 months ago when they delayed Build 42, but it's much more tame and composed, and he does take some ownership, which is what I think most people were looking for above all else. I say some because while he does say we removed these likely forever, and he does apologize for the team having dropped the ball on this, there's also some damage control, like, if we did miss it, it's only because we were working so hard crunching to get this out before Christmas. And there's a bit of, well, we paid an artist for this, so it's not entirely our fault. And to that I'd say, you are the company paying for the product, so by default you own that purchase, which means you have final say on what to include, and to look at something like this in the midst of the AI craze going on and be like, yeah, fuck it, it looks good. To think that's not going to piss people off is a bit wild to me, and I'm going to try to explain why in the best way I can, so please just hang with me for a second. This isn't an insult or a tangent. I genuinely think I know why people are more upset about this in a game like Project Zomboid than in a game like Black Ops 6. Project Zomboid is one of the most successful indie games of all time. Keyword is indie game. When people think of indie studios and projects, there's typically a cult-like following with those games. It's the reason this game had a dedicated few thousand players for almost a decade before Build 41. It's all about the community. Well, that exploded in Build 41. For the most part, the Zomboid community was pretty welcoming. I mean, what's not to love? Everyone helps each other for the most part, and the devs seem like great people. So I think when you get in a situation like this, where an indie game achieves this level of success, there's a massive sense of pride within the community. Because it looks like David vs. Goliath. The small indie studio is going toe-to-toe and even outselling some AAA games. It's a testament that good games, no matter how they're made, can still succeed without a massive corporate budget. So when you take that and implement something like AI artwork, whether intentional or not, it comes off as aligning yourself with AAA practices, which is something that I'd say most gamers hate. I mean, it's kind of the biggest debate happening in gaming right now, aside from the big scary woke, but that's a different conversation for another time. My point is, when you take a small studio game like Project Zomboid that already has beautiful artwork that the players by every metric fucking love, and then you toss AI artwork in its place, people are going to notice immediately, and I'd wager to guess that a lot of the pissed off fans feel a little betrayed by that action because, to them, they're supporting the passion and love and dedication that goes into a game, only for that same game to spit out a cheaply designed AI image to them, at least in their heads. And then, initially, you have the co-founder of the studio going onto Reddit and saying, well, you know, it's not technically our fault entirely because we commissioned an artist and we thought it was good work. And then you're trusting just thousands of people to accept that at face value. It's not going to work. Anyway, hopefully that made some sense. Sorry, I'm running on like 3 hours of sleep here. I do want to say I would be pissed off too if I spent 2 years working on a major update and the biggest thing people want to talk about is the artwork instead of the mechanics. It's also worth noting that I don't think the title screen was AI at all. I think that was a true redesign, and that's what I mean by don't assume everything is AI just because it's different. Same thing with the Moodles. It's okay not to like them. Art is subjective. But let's quell the AI slop accusations and save them for the actual targets. Again, I want to give credit where it's due. They recognized the discourse right away and got the images removed in less than 24 hours. Really, less than 12 hours. They still deserve a hefty amount of criticism for approving and using the artwork if in fact it was AI generated. And I don't think they should be easily let off the hook for that, but let's call out the correct images and not just chalk everything up to AI. Please. Alright, that was a long one, and I've got to hop on stream in less than 2 hours, so I'm going to call it here. Hopefully this helps a few of you out, specifically the Moodle changes and muscle strain adjustments, and hopefully I don't sound like a complete lunatic in regards to the AI debacle. With that though, I'm going to get out of here. Let me know your thoughts, if there's any other new features that you want me to break down or share my tweaks and setting changes for, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.